Hey everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology for December 12th through 18th, 2022. This means we are officially in the middle of December. It seems so strange, which means we are also wrapping up 2022, which also feels strange. I don't know about you. I think I mentioned this last week, but yeah, here we are. So as always, if you're watching live, it's always nice to say hello and check in and let me know where you're watching from. And even if you're not watching live, it's still nice to say hello and let me know where you're watching from, because I know that you all watch from all over the place, and my Sagittarius rising just likes to travel vicariously through all the fun places in the world, whether it's Hawaii or Spain, where I would really rather be right now because it's probably a lot warmer than it is here in the New York City area where I am. So yeah, my name is Katie Sweetman, and I am an astrologer and psychic medium here in the New York City area. And every week we gather live to look at the astrology. And you know, I say it every week, the astrology is 50%, you are the other 50%. It's, you know, this idea that time is not something that we can control. We can just witness it, exist in it, work with it, live it, inhabit it, and that part is up to us. And that's what astrology is. It's the study of time, these sort of different cycles and rhythms of time. And that's really what we're looking at this week, because as I was looking at the astrology for this week, it's all these different cycles that are starting to come to a close, whether it's in the immediate or actually not so in the immediate. So we've got the end of the year. That's the end of a calendar cycle. Fun fact, the astrological calendar does not end at the end of December. In fact, it ends at the right before the spring equinox here. Well, equinox here in the Northern Hemisphere in March, and that's traditionally the start of the zodiac calendar. It's where we have the rebirth of life. We take that first breath with the sign of Aries. Yet here we are in Sagittarius season. We still got a few months to go, but again, we're wrapping up the year. And then Jupiter, which is the ruler of Sagittarius season, it's presently sitting at 29 degrees of Pisces, which is the degree that the sun arrives at when we get to the end of the astrological year. But here we are in December. So there is this end of a cycle with Jupiter. It's come to the end of the zodiac. And if you know a little bit of astrology or even some astronomy, Jupiter takes almost 12 years to go through the entirety of the zodiac sign. So where Jupiter is right now, it's not going to come back to until the 2030s. I know, it sounds crazy. Anyway. So yeah, Jupiter's at the end of the zodiac this week. It's the last full week of Sagittarius season. We have the solstice next week. We have the start, winter solstice here in the Northern Hemisphere. I know for a lot of you that watch in the Southern Hemisphere, I know it's tomorrow in the Southern Hemisphere. It's the start of summer, kind of missed summer at the moment. But the winter solstice is this sacred moment where we mark the passage of time. We mark the rebirth of light, the sun. Then starts its ascent back towards the days being, well, you get to the spring equinox and it's equal day and light, and then you get to the summer solstice, and then it's the longest day of the year, and then we just do this dance every year, again and again and again. But that is the cycle of life, that's the cycle of time, and the zodiac is symbolically the wheel of life, meaning everything that exists in creation, that exists in our lives, that we experience or can potentially experience, happens somewhere in the zodiac. And so Sagittarius season, we are now getting to the end of the zodiac. And Sagittarius, as you heard me say at the start of the season, it's the last fire sign. It's the sign that is meant to illuminate illuminate our view of the world, our view of ourselves, the sort of these deeper themes around faith and truth and meaning, philosophy, religion, or even just sort of education, trying to get a sense of the world. But Sagittarius is trying to get us to find answers. And so this week with Jupiter at 29 degrees of Pisces, these answers, we're not going to find them out in the world. That's the thing about Pisces. And this is a little bit like a technical point. The zodiac does not end at Saturn. I mean, it doesn't end at a Saturn-ruled sign. It ends at a Jupiter-ruled sign. It ends at water. Water, this element that moves us. It's meant to move us from one stage of life to the next, one state of being to the next. When we get to Pisces, Jupiter's in Pisces right now, we've reached the end of the zodiac, but we've reached the end of something, a journey, a life. The end of Pisces is where we take our last breath, symbolically, and where we take a new breath, 0 Aries, where it all begins again. So we're sort of straddling this very liminal space, and because it's this, space that can be, high spirituality at 29 Pisces, or maybe even really feeling that we're suffering in our own emotional or even spiritual abyss at 29 Pisces. The fish goes 2 different directions, let's not forget, but it's sort of like, what does it all mean? Like, what does the last 12 years mean? Last Jupiter cycle mean? What does 2022 mean? And what does even what our lives mean? And Pisces is a sign that's going to get a lot of attention in 2023 because Saturn is going to go into Pisces on March 7th and not leave for 2.5, 3 years. So Jupiter is sort of leading the way, Jupiter is leading the way for Saturn's time in Pisces 2023 all the way to 2025, and I believe 2026. And, good segue. I'm gonna be doing a webinar this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern on the astrology of 2023. Every time this year, I do sort of my big roundup for the year and talking about these bigger points that we're going to be navigating in the coming year. And so in this case, Saturn is going to go into Pisces in 2023, and Pluto is going to make its first dip into Aquarius, which is big news because last time Pluto changed signs was 2008. And then we've got the eclipses switching from Taurus and Scorpio going into Aries and Libra. We got some other things. I'm pretty sure there's a Venus retrograde in there as well. But, if you can, English hard. If you want to sign up for the webinar, you still can. The link is in the show notes, or you can go to empoweringastrology.com/webinars. And if you cannot watch live, because I know whether you are in the, in Australia, or you're on the other side of the world, or it's just, you're at work, you can still get the replay. It'll be 2 hours. If knowing me, it'll probably be more than 2 hours. And, we got a lot to talk about with 2023 because we've got some big changes astrologically. My point is that Jupiter is in this place that Saturn's going to visit. And this is a little bit of a technical point, but Jupiter doesn't rule over matter and manifestation. It doesn't rule the signs that form the fixed cross. Little fun fact. So Jupiter doesn't talk about our earthly lives. It talks about our spiritual lives, whether it's sort of the sense of right and wrong or religion, Jupiter and Sagittarius, or sort of spirituality and mysticism, and sort of these deeper existential questions and searching with Jupiter in Pisces, which is where it is right now. So Jupiter has this reputation in astrology for being like Santa Claus or good luck, good fortune. And I really don't like to overpromise Jupiter. And I'm saying this as somebody whose whole chart is Jupiter ruled. I'm Sag rising. But I've seen Jupiter come and go. And I think Jupiter, we want to look at it as the planet of luck, but I think Jupiter is the planet of grace. And grace is a very different energy than luck. And I think grace, and especially as we navigate the last few moments of the zodiac with Jupiter at 29 Pisces, maybe this is a week to obtain grace. I realize that's a big statement. I think grace doesn't have to be these big spiritual moments. I think they can be quiet. I think when there's an act of mercy. That's what Pisces is mercy. And how, maybe something can work out. There's hope, there's compassion. And I think Jupiter can plant seeds of grace, of mercy, and compassion release, forgiveness. Pisces is not a sign that's about the physical world. That's why I said Jupiter does not rule over the cross of matter and manifestation, the fixed cross, rules over the mutable cross. And so Jupiter pulls us into a different space, not a physical space. It's an emotional space. It's a quiet, spiritual, liminal space that is meant to be the bridge between this world and the next world, this life and the next life, this breath and the next breath. It's in the interstitial place. So when people come to me and they want to learn about mediumship and psychic development and opening up their spirituality and their spiritual gifts, and I always say meditation, there has to be the grounded practice. Virgo is the sign the opposite of Pisces, the grounded practice that can help you to move into or be able to access the Piscean space without getting completely lost. Because somebody who teaches meditation, be surprised how many people they start to move with the energy and they go to sleep. Well, that's another way of doing Pisces, is going to sleep. And maybe that's the faith of Pisces, is that we'll wake up in the morning. So it's an interesting week because it's Sagittarius season. It's the end of Sagittarius season, and Jupiter's at the very end of Pisces. And so I sort of invite you all to get quiet, to lean into those liminal spaces, to listen, between your breath, between your heartbeats, to hear something. And I realize not everybody perceives spirit the way that I do, but I feel like that we all have the wiring to hear, to feel, even if it's just not spirit, to hear ourselves, to hear our GPS, our inner guidance. And that's the other thing about the duality between Pisces and Sagittarius, is their sense of direction with Pisces and Sagittarius. It's worldly direction with Sagittarius, but it's sort of the inner mystic, the inner direction with Pisces. And the beauty of astrology is it gives us a framework, and it gives us a framework of time, but it's up to you to navigate that framework of time. And of course, as an astrologer, I can give you my perspective and maybe even my intuition, and maybe even as a medium, I can hear your spirit guides, but up to you. It's at the end of the day, it's up to you, and only listen to yourself. That's the most important thing, to listen to yourself. And this is a week for us to do that. As we, good segue into the astrology of December 12th through 18th, 2022. So we start the week with a very quiet sextile between the Sun in Sagittarius and Saturn in Aquarius. I say quiet because sextiles, and which is what's called a 60-degree angle between two planets, and a trine, a 120-degree angle between planets, they are energies that connect us to light, to spirit. They don't talk of, it's an opportunity, something can happen, grace, there's that word again, but we need the energy of the square, matter and manifestation, for it to come into physical reality and being. So this could be a day where there's these sort of quiet moments where things come into focus. There's sort of a sharper sense of direction. Saturn is sort of showing us which way is the more mature direction, the more mature choice. But sextiles sort of pass us by. But maybe that's kind of we're feeling into that space today, Monday, December 12th. Then we go into December 14th, and the Sagittarius sun makes a square to Neptune in Pisces. So square, not a sextile, square. Square is 90-degree angles. So there's a friction point. Squares are not bad, but they are energy that wants to bring something into physical being. But here's the thing about Neptune, is that it works in a very interstitial, there's that word again, a very liminal space. There's that word again. It dissolves the boundaries between this world and the next world. So Neptune, it's an evolutionary planet. It doesn't work in the same way as the traditional planets, Sun, Moon, Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury. But Neptune, it was discovered in 1846. And it, from a sort of a astrological level, it opens us up to something. And it makes us feel things, perceive things that, whether it is true, like a true spiritual experience, or whether it's illusion or madness, that's for us to navigate. But wherever Neptune is, it's a spiritual work, meaning it doesn't work in the way that we want it to work. It's something that's beyond us. And what does the sun? The sun is the sign of the self, the creative self, self-expression, identity, persona. It's also the light of the chart. And it has this sort of friction point with Neptune this week. And so we have to align our sense of self, sun, with something that's beyond ourself. It could be our higher self, whatever you want to believe in. It could be something spiritual, even higher than yourself. And sort of these moments, and I think we're all learning this lesson with Mars square Neptune, these moments where we realize that we're not always in control. And I say the astrology is 50%, you're the other 50%, but there's moments where we have forces that are greater than us. And I think these evolutionary forces of Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, we have to learn to navigate to the best we can as human beings. And so looking at the different facets of self and the ego and creativity this week, and how do we transcend beyond that and not get lost in the process. On a more mundane level, Sun square Neptune, maybe we're feeling very emotional. Maybe we're really getting deep into some existential questions, because Neptune is pulling at the boundaries, pulling at the curtain between this side and the other side. What does it all mean? Where am I going? These sort of deeper questions that we, of course, even ask ourselves at the end of the year. But here we are. We got big Jupiter sitting at the end of Pisces. We got the Sun square Neptune, and it's Sagittarius season, a season that's already pointing us toward the stars, towards the heavens, towards these sort of bigger questions that we're all trying to navigate as human beings. And then we go into the end of the week, and Mercury, it's actually going to make a series of connections, whether it's the 15th, it makes a square to Chiron, Aries, and then on the 16th, it makes a trine to Uranus in Taurus. So Mercury is going to be spending 9 weeks in total in Capricorn. It's not going to leave Capricorn until I think sometime in February. I'm blanking on the date, but why so long? Because Mercury is going to turn retrograde on the 29th of December. So yeah, it's almost that time of year, and I don't mean the holidays. I mean Mercury turning retrograde. And you know me, I'm not a huge freaker-outer about Mercury retrograde. I think it really depends on what it's ruling, what it's doing, but it's just a time that reminds us that we can't always push out. We have to go in. The tide doesn't always go out. It goes back and forth. Every planet in astrology, except for the sun and the moon, goes back and forth. The outer planets will spend 5 months out of the year retrogrades. This is where I'm getting on my Sagittarius soapbox for a second. When everybody freaks out that like, oh my God, 5 planets are retrograde right now. It's like, that's normal. It's like literally 5 months out of the year you can expect to find Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto retrograde. Jupiter spends 4 months out of the year retrograde. So next week, in advance of some of the things going on, Jupiter goes into Aries, the sun goes into Capricorn, so we're sort of on the edge of things. But let me get back to Mercury. So Mercury is the voice of the chart. I mean, here in Sagittarius season, Mercury governs over Virgo, which is the 10th sign for Sagittarius, and the 7th sign, which is relationship. So we're sort of experiencing these Mercury aspects through relationship, but also this idea of our duties and responsibilities to the world. Chiron, it's a little bit of a subtle influence. For me, it's a very important influence because it's showing us where we have to do our deeper healing work. Chiron, it's been in Aries since 2018. If Chiron's a pain point, what's the pain point? Well, the pain point is in how we take action. What's our relationship with courage and bravery? How do we stand up for ourselves? What's our motivation? How do we go after what we desire? Or do we not? Do we not stand up for ourselves? Is there a complicated relationship with motivation or even desire or even agency? power. Aries is a sign of self-power, self-motivation, and agency. And Chiron was in Aries from 1968 to 1977. So if you were born during those years, you are having something called a Chiron return. So this is maybe a deeper thread through your experiences in this lifetime, if not multiple lifetimes, if you believe in that. So we're navigating these deeper themes around making choices, Mercury, using our voice in a way that really asserts our agency, our power, our sense of know, our individuality. And maybe sometimes the difficult conversations we have to have, or the courage and bravery to go after what we want, whether it's in the world, whether it's in a relationship, for example. Mercury then makes a trine to Uranus, and these are actually aspects, whether it's the square to Mercury, the square to Chiron, or the trine to Uranus, that we're going to revisit back and forth into the end of January. Mercury trine Chiron, there's trine, opportunity, support. It's a way to see something differently. It could be like an unexpected perspective. It could be a flash of insight. And maybe this is an unexpected perspective and a flash of insight that gets us to see an old problem or an old suffering or an old pain point in a different perspective. We'll have to see. But this is, like I said, we're going to be revisiting these aspects throughout January. So we'll come back to them. So that is your look at the astrology for this week. Of course, let's look at what this means for each of the 12 signs. Where is Jupiter leading you to the end of something? Yeah, each sign of the zodiac, 29 Pisces, the end of the zodiac is somewhere in your astrology chart. So where are we sort of asking ourselves these big questions? How does this come back to Sag season? And then, of course, we're getting ready for Capricorn season next week, and a season and even into Aquarius season, that's going to bring us to the end of Saturn's time in Aquarius. But I am getting ahead of myself. So let's look at the astrology for this week, December 12th through 18th, 2022, starting with Aries. Aries, 29 Pisces. So let me step back for a second. Aries, whether you are Aries rising or a sun in Aries, 29 Pisces forms the end of your personal zodiac. Yes, it's the end of the zodiac, but because you are what's called a natural chart, it's also the end of your zodiac. And 29 Pisces is the last breath of life, but it's also that moment that takes you to the first breath of life, which is 0 Aries. Pisces for you is something called the 12th sign. And the 12th sign is the last sign of your personal astrology. And when you get to the 12th sign, you're no longer in the realm of physical world. It's not about your ambitions. It's not about your power. It's not about your ego. It's something beyond that. And sometimes that's where we really struggle with the 12th, because we have to make peace with the things that are greater than us. We have to connect to the things that are beyond us. So Jupiter's time in and out of Pisces, Jupiter was in Pisces in 2021. It went out, it went back in last December, it went out into Aries in May, and then it's back from October 28th until December 20th of this year. And this has been this sort of in and out of different beginnings, because Jupiter is like the great voyage, whether it's the voyage to another country or a voyage to another land or a voyage to the world beyond this world, to life beyond this world. And so maybe you felt like your life has been in sort of these two different chapters and things not kind of fully coming into one chapter. And the way that I'm seeing Jupiter's time in Pisces is that it's laying a lot of groundwork. It's planting a lot of seeds for Saturn's time in Pisces starting next March, which means that you Aries, you're coming to this time in your sort of personal journey where you're going to be doing a lot of work with the 12th, which is learning to let go, learning to find compassion and to surrender, and to develop a relationship with your own spirituality, to detach. The 12th is where we detach from things, to detach from the things that make you suffer, that pull you back, that hold you down, and do not support your spiritual growth and evolution. So take notes. Aries, because this is a space that you're going to go back to over a 3-year period. It doesn't mean that this is the only thing that's going to be going on in your astrology, but it certainly is going to be a big note. The last time Saturn was in Pisces was from 1994 to 1996. But yeah, that's where a lot of that big focus is right now. And Aries, last comment, the Sagittarius season for you is this time where it is about these big questions. It is about big travel, searching, exploring, trying to sort of get the answers from the world outside of you. But don't forget about getting answers from the world inside of you. Taurus. Taurus. So 29 Pisces forms the very end of what's called your 11th sign. And the 11th sign is about your relationship with the larger whole, and whether it's friends, community, your social circle, allies, groups, but also society, humanity. And you're at the sort of that last point where you're looking back at your human life and sort of trying to make sense of things. And maybe you're in a little bit of a wistful philosophical mood as a result, Taurus. It's been a big year, Taurus. You've had eclipses in your signs. You've had Saturn square Uranus. I'm sure there's other things that I'm just blanking on because it's just been so much. And so maybe you're really looking towards the future, trying to hope and dream and wish for something different, or to really vision exactly what you want to go after. And maybe Jupiter is giving you sort of that big push to really to go after what you want in the world. Once Jupiter goes back into Aries, which it's already went there in earlier this year. You sort of step into this time where it is about cultivating a deeper spiritual connection while Jupiter is in Aries. And with Sagittarius season Sagittarius is your 8th sign. It has been pulling at a lot of deeper emotions for you, Taurus. And maybe this is where, a lot of the inner work and, let's say, emotional heavy lifting that you've been doing this season, it's like, okay, well, what does it all mean? Like, where does it point you towards? Where's your sort of inner compass aligned with? Venus, which is your planet, is in your 9th sign, and the 9th sign sort of echoes a lot of these themes that have been going on. It's like travel, exploration, truth, meaning, education, trying to put a sense of meaning on everything. But use this time to really vision, to look ahead, to sort of what is potential future or futures plural for you, and then how do you start to take steps to head towards it. Gemini, you had that spicy full moon last week, so you were in the spotlight just last week. It doesn't mean that you're not in the spotlight right now, but maybe you're sort of navigating a lot of that Mars energy. Mars was a big focal point in last week's full moon, and maybe you had a lot to say. Maybe you were being in a lot of reaction, or maybe you were navigating something back and forth with another person. That said, 29 Pisces forms the end of what's called your 10th sign. And the 10th sign is career. Yes, it is your professional life. Yes, but it's the sign that really helps orient you towards the world and the role that you want to play in the world. And it sort of pulls us outside of our sort of personal life and into something greater. The thing, I always find it very interesting that Pisces is Gemini's 10th sign, because Pisces, when it's part, or even by extension Neptune, when Pisces is part of the career story, we have to make sure that our ambitions align with our heart. We just can't go out and get a job and just sort of expect to be happy, where it's going to really kick in with a lot of that Gemini boredom. But it's like the second you feel that your life is aligned towards a larger mission and cause, Jupiter, Pisces, then you're happy, at least in theory. So you're coming to the end of something in your professional life. Last time Jupiter was in this part of your chart, apart from 2021, was 12 years ago. So this has been a time to expand your professional life, to plant seeds, in your professional life. And maybe things have been going well, and maybe there have been doors that have opened for you over the last 6 months, or even beyond that, with Jupiter in Pisces. I said this for Aries, and I'll say it for you, and really I'll say it for all the signs. Jupiter is laying a framework for Saturn's time in Pisces. This is going to be 2023 to 2026. Saturn going through Pisces, starting next year, is going to say to you, Gemini, what do you want to be when you grow up? And every Gemini is going to have to answer that question differently. And you could be like, Katie, I'm 6 years old. Like, what do you mean when I grow up? Well, you're going through a time that's either a career peak, even at 60, or a time when you are having to redefine your role in the world, the duties and responsibilities that you want to carry, getting involved with missions and causes, and sort of making sure that the direction of your life is oriented towards something in your heart, in your soul. Or maybe it's a time where you have to rebuild something, recalibrate something, or do something very differently, or even take the next step up in your professional life. So, like I said, Jupiter can be very idealistic. It can sort of give us that bright, big, bold, shiny vision of like, yes, this is what I'm going to do with my life. And then here comes Saturn next year, and Saturn's like, okay, I see you had some big ideas. How do we make these big ideas reality? Now, Saturn is a huge support, but Saturn does not suffer fools, and it's gonna, really kind of keep you marching as you go over the next few years. So really pay attention to what's being born out of this time, what's also leaving, because there is that sense with Pisces is the end of something, and maybe things have been leaving your life in preparation for something new to come in. Excuse me. Sagittarius season for you is the time that talks about relationships. And so there is an element of relationships in all of this, because Jupiter is your relationship sign. Mercury right now is in Capricorn, and Capricorn for you is a sign that not only touches on, having to get serious about things, having to make some sort of mature decisions and take responsibilities and duties seriously, but Mercury is also in your 8th. So there are these deeper themes around intimacy and vulnerability and opening up and feeling safe and sort of revealing something, whether it's in a partnership, a relationship, or even revealing something within you. And so just note, because Mercury is going to be spending 9 weeks in total in your 8th, you're doing a lot of deeper work into February. Yes. So keep that in mind, especially as Mercury runs up against Chiron and Uranus later this week, because these could be illuminations that take you through different experiences and different choices as you go into February. Cancer. So 29 Pisces for you forms the end of your 9th sign. And the 9th sign, and this is where there's a little bit of a flip going on. The 9th sign is where we try to make meaning in the world. It's where we can get involved in a sense of mission and advocacy. It's where we meet higher education. It's where we're trying to look out in the world and make sense of things and travel and explore and seek out adventures. But Pisces has this very emotional quality to it. Yes, you're a Cancer, and sort of like you really want to have your heart and your soul in the things that, you really, really stand behind, whatever your truth and convictions are. So 29 Pisces is in a way saying to you, what do you believe in? What do you stand for? Is your soul, is your heart behind the things or behind the truths that you've aligned yourself with? And this is where we are coming to the end of Sagittarius season. Sagittarius season for you does talk about work. It talks about really being in the human elements of your life, whether it's taking care of your physical health and wellness, whether it's work and projects, being of service. But how do you make sure your human life is in alignment with your larger goals, ideals, and visions? And you hear me say every week, Cancer, yes, this is the end of Saturn's time in your 8th. And the function of the 8th, apart to really move a lot of stuff internally and emotionally and spiritually, is to get you to discover some sort of deeper truth within yourself, to examine faith. And I think the faith born out of the 8th is a very particular type of faith because it's a lived faith. It's not the faith that, I just read something in a book and I just accept it as true. It's like, no, I've been through it. And, Jupiter's time in Pisces is leading the way for Saturn's time in Pisces. And so you're going into a time next year where you have to get very clear about what you believe in, what you stand for, what you think is truth, and what is your relationship with faith. And maybe after the last few years, do you still have faith? You've been through a lot, Cancer. Leo. So 29 Pisces is the end of what I affectionately call the 8th room. Pisces is what's called your 8th sign. So Jupiter going through the 8th is actually kind of interesting because the 8th functions as a place of deep inner psychic and emotional movement. It's what I also affectionately refer to as the underworld, because I tell my clients, imagine a life that is never tested and imagine a life that is never examined. Does it grow? Of course not. So this has been a time where you've had to do the inner work. You've had to shine a light on the things that maybe typically you haven't wanted to shine a light on. Jupiter gives you the optimism, the faith, the courage to go through this emotional deep space inside of you. And I think, Jupiter can really bring a lot of deep wisdom out of the time in the 8th. So as Jupiter sits at 29 Pisces, what have you learned? What's your truth? What's your beliefs? The 8th is on a traditional level a space of, it's a money space. It talks about inheritances, wills. I know it sounds very scorpionic because it is. It talks about benefits. And I think legacy is a word that we can highlight because legacy can mean a lot of different things. There's financial legacy, of course, but there's emotional legacy, spiritual legacy. And what are the things that you are both carrying over to Jupiter going back into Aries, and what are the things you're not carrying over? And maybe that's where Jupiter is giving you the courage and the strength to really leave some things behind. The 8th can be a space of wealth, and I always look at the 8th as the wealth that comes out of the 8th that's emotional is true wealth, because the emotional wealth of the 8th, or the wealth that's discovered in the 8th, is the wealth that really nourishes you and takes you not only through the rest of your life, but takes you beyond this life, because you cannot take money with you when you die, but you can take the emotional wealth that you discovered while doing the deep inner work. Virgo. So you just had that spicy full moon last week where it put in the spotlight your professional life. But that said, Virgo, Mercury for you is in Capricorn. That's why I got the Saturn thing going on. Mercury is in Capricorn, so this is sort of this 9-week in total until February. I need to get the date in my brain, I can't remember. But in February, Mercury will finally leave Capricorn. So this is this time where you're really doing a lot of deeper examination about who are you? What makes you you? What are your passions, your talents, your gifts, and your abilities? And this is a time where you have to get very razor sharp clear about who you are. Who you are is not the name on your documents, your license. Who you are is something that you can only feel inside of you. And it comes when you're in those moments of where you're completely geeking out, nerding out, playing with something. And maybe it is in those moments of doing that very traditional Virgo organization, helping, serving work. That's you. And that's the thing about Virgo is sometimes it gives and it gives and it gives, but it creates an imbalance. And how do you put things back into balance right now? Because Saturn loves balance, and it does not like it when we try to extend ourselves or not really value what makes us us, and we put that to the side for other people's needs. Of course, be of service, Virgo. You are the sign of service, but do not do it in a way that completely crushes you. That said, 29 Pisces is the end of your 7th sign, which is relationships for you. And this is the last time Jupiter is going to be in your relationship area for 12 years. You're like, oh my God, does it mean I'm in a relationship? Of course not. But this has been a time, 2021, periods of 2021, periods of 2022, where Jupiter has been trying to open up something in relationships, whether it's a quality of relationships, whether new people have been coming into your life. You know what? Sometimes people leave. our lives when Jupiter is in the 7th. We have the courage and we have the confidence to finally leave a relationship that is stuck, or maybe even a relationship that's quite negative. But that said, Jupiter is planting seeds for Saturn's time in Pisces. And so from 2023 to 2026, Saturn is going to get you to work on relationships. And Saturn, remember, Saturn loves relationships. And Saturn actually is the planet that I look for when I look for serious relationships, because so maybe Virgo, you're coming into a time of serious relationship. If you are already in a serious relationship, this is, Saturn is really trying to put things into order and make things stronger. So that's going to be a lot of your work over the next few years. But that said, this has been, one of those times, Virgo, where a lot of things are getting highlighted in your chart. And maybe this has been a week or a season that's really trying to move things in a different direction. Libra. So 29 Pisces for you is the end of your 6th sign. Traditionally, the 6th sign talks about health and wellness, but on a larger level, the 6th is where we have to maintain our human life. We all have to do things in order to maintain hygiene, to maintain health, to maintain our jobs, to make sure everything flows, that we earn a living, that everything is organized. And that's, you can't get more human and real than the 6th. And yet you have Pisces as this sort of ethereal, otherworldly sign in a part of your chart that is very worldly. It just says, Libra, that you have to really try to find, do your human life, but do it with that beautiful Piscean energy of ritual and really infusing the day-to-day with the things that actually have a deeper purpose and meaning for you. That said, Jupiter's time through your 6th has maybe opened up awareness or opened up opportunities in taking care of your human life in a different way. Maybe you've made positive changes in your health and wellness, or maybe you felt very inspired to really expand, your human life and get things organized and put things into their own place, because the 6th is really where our lives run from. And it's like a really important relationship with the 1st, but I'm getting off on a little tangent. So that said, Jupiter is laying a groundwork for Saturn, and make sure Jupiter is really, with the week that you have left of Jupiter and Pisces, really take those positive and healthy initiatives. And of course, this means different things for different people. But when Saturn goes into the 6th, it's a very different energy. And I'm just, being a little bit dramatic for a moment. If you've been not taking care of your health, your wellness, your human life, if everything is in disorder, you don't want Saturn to sort of show up and be like, what's going on here? So use this last push of Jupiter to sort of give you the vision, inspiration to make healthy changes. And then Saturn comes in March and then helps you to make them a reality. That said, Venus is your planet and it's in Capricorn right now, and maybe you're really feeling the advance of Saturn really kind of getting you to focus on the things that are important, focus on home and family, and really taking care of your roots and foundation, and your emotional roots and foundation in your life. Scorpio, 29 Pisces is the end of your 5th. Yes, Scorpio's 5th sign is Pisces. The 5th is where we really encounter the energies of self-expression, creativities, talents, gifts, and abilities, romance. It's the romance of life. And the 5th reminds us to have passion, to have joy. And I think this reminds us just how sensitive Scorpio is, despite its sort of hard Mars ruled edge. It does, have Pisces as its 5th sign. And this is where, Scorpio can get really into things, or really into people. Pisces can get really into things. That said, the end of Jupiter at the end of your 5th, this is a time where, between 2021 and 2022, give or take, you've had to really get back to you. It's been this journey, and maybe you've needed this, Scorpio. You are a fixed sign, and you've been in the midst since 2021 and 2022. Some major seismic shifts in your life occurring with some major seismic astrology. what makes you you? And I think when you're really having to navigate some big astrology or perhaps even a crisis, like we have to put that to a side. It's not important. We have to focus on the matter at the moment, but that's a recipe. If it's long term, it's a recipe for burnout. So this is a time to restoke the things that really give you joy, to give you passion and give you life, that really make you you and light you up, because you need that, because you're doing a lot of heavy lifting right now, Scorpio. And let's not forget that Mars, your planet, is still in your 8th. The 8th is the space in the astrology chart where we all have to go in order to face ourselves. And I know that's typically Scorpio, this is your jam. You're like, oh, the 8th, that's my space, the 8th house, the 8th room. But it's a lot. It's a lot to the 8th is death. And I'm being a little, again, dramatic for a moment, and because death is a part of life. And death is, whether it's a symbolic death or a literal death, it's what makes space for something new. So a lot of things are leaving your life right now. And when you're in that really heavy energy of death, symbolic death, maybe even literal, you need to make sure you replenish your life. So use this last week to reaffirm yourself, to reaffirm the things that light you up, that give you pleasure, give you joy, give you passion, to help you to refine the romance of life in the midst of all this 8th house work. It does connect to relationships, and maybe, get a little romance in your life. You do have a lot of big relationship transits happening right now and even into the new year. But that said, Mars is retrograde at the moment. It's going to be retrograde until January 12th. So this is a lot of introspective work at the moment, Scorpio. And, Sagittarius season for you is about a lot of the things that really help you to be rooted and anchored and grounded. Making sure you have a roof over your head, money in the bank, you're taking care of the resources in your life, but really getting clear about what's of value. And maybe that's in contrast to a lot of the 8th house work you're doing, a lot of 8th sign work you're doing at the moment, because, with so much stuff, leaving, or maybe even having to relook at a lot of things in your life. So the bigger question is, what's of value? What's truly of value? And maybe that's the big light bulb that goes off this week. Sagittarius, happy birthday, Sagittarius. If you're born in that last 5 days of Sagittarius, that's a very, really otherworldly part of the zodiac, because it aligns with the galactic center. And I feel like the people that are born between 22, 3 Sag, all the way to about 28, 29 Sag, it's like you've got this connection to something otherworldly. Anyway, I digress. So this is a big week for you, because it's not just a birthday week. If you're celebrating your birthday, it's not just coming off of the full moon last week, which highlighted relationships, but it's also Jupiter in its own sign, Pisces, at the end of what's called your 4th. So Sag, you are in a phase of life, whether you're a Sag rising or Sag sun, where you are settling down. I said this to somebody recently, and that maybe there's a cultural spin on that phrase, settling down. I don't meet the white picket fence. Settling down, of course, culturally means different things, but settling down means settling down into your life. And maybe for some people, you are, Sagittarius, you're coming into a phase where it is about family and home and the sort of the things that really anchor you in life. And that's, don't forget that the 4th, which is one of the 4 pillars of life, reminds us that family and all of its permutations is one of the 4 pillars of life. We need family. We need home. Of course, family is always a complicated thing. That said, this is a time to really re-anchor into your life and to focus on the people who are family or like family that are really going to support you and anchor you. Here comes Saturn next March, and it's going to really start to concretize a lot of the work that Jupiter was doing while it's been in and out of Pisces in 2021 and 2022. So pay attention, Sagittarius. The end of the zodiac is at the very bottom of your chart, and it's sort of this very liminal space where it reminds you that home and family are so important, but of course make sure that these are the people or these are the places that actually nourish you. Pisces is a water sign. It has to nourish you not just on a human level, but it has to nourish you on a deep spiritual level as well. So maybe you're feeling a little bit like existential questions, like, what does it all mean? Where am I going? It's a little bit of a heavy space, Sagittarius, because the 29 Pisces, I said this at an earlier point in our time together, is the last breath of life. It is the last breath of life that prepares you for the first breath of life, which is symbolized by 0 Aries. So you're sort of at the end of something right now, Sagittarius, and I know you're the sign of the voyage and the search and the quest, and maybe part of you really likes this deep space, but it is deep space for you. And maybe that's for you to really reflect on faith and what is going to move you into this new chapter of your life, and how do you get nourished and get your needs met so that you can really start this new chapter once Jupiter goes into Aries next week on December 20th. Mind you, Jupiter did go into Aries, I think it was like May 13th-ish of this year until October. So you've already done Jupiter in Aries, but that was sort of a preview, and then Jupiter goes back into Aries, and then by next May it's in Taurus. I'm getting ahead of myself. But yeah, really sit with these deeper questions because they're important this week, Sagittarius. Capricorn. So 29 Pisces for you forms the end of your third sign. And there's a lot of ways in which you can look at the third, because it's a space in the astrology that helps us to really start to understand our world, but our world on a small level. Third is a very environmental space. It could be our immediate surroundings, it could be our neighborhood, it could be the people that are right here, and how we interact on a day-to-day basis. But the third is also where we start to encounter language, information, ideas, education, communication. So having Pisces as your third sign, it sort of reminds us, Capricorn, that you're actually a lot more intuitive than I think people give you credit for. Capricorn is a yin sign. It's the yin counterpoint to Aquarius' Saturn-ruled yang, so it's more of a receptive, reflective sign, which doesn't always line up with how we culturally think of culturally think of Capricorn, but there you go. So it's a time where it's about voice and communication and ideas and information, and really aligning that mental process with something that's also deeply intuitive and spiritual. Another way of looking at the third is the space of choice. It teaches us about the duality of life and thus the duality of our choices. And Jupiter coming to the end of the zodiac in your third is sort of the end of this long voyage of discovery. And sort of the question is, what choices are you making? Jupiter will go into Aries next week, a space that it already went into between May and October. But this is sort of this time where you have to go back and re-reflect, so then you can make some real choices once Jupiter goes into Aries. That said, it is in advance of your season. It starts next week, and interestingly enough, 29 Pisces in a way echoes where the sun is right now for you in your personal zodiac, because the sun is in your 12th. So as you get up until the 20th of December, you are in that space where it's about releasing, letting go, and to prepare for a new life, and one that begins when your season starts on December 21st. Aquarius. So 29 Pisces forms the end of your second sign. And the second sign is about money, your material life, and income. So I think it's kind of interesting that we have the most otherworldly sign of the zodiac overlapping with the most worldly parts of your astrology. The 2nd, the 5th, the 8th, and the 11th, they form the cross of matter and manifestation in your life, and it governs over like the real human things in your life. It doesn't get more real and human than money and resource. So this is a time where your deeper spirituality or deeper spiritual values has to align with your material values. They can't be separated. And while Jupiter going through the 2nd can sometimes bring financial windfalls or financial grace, and maybe this is Jupiter really opening up some opportunities for you to capitalize on once Saturn goes into Pisces next March. It's like you want to make sure that these opportunities are actually aligned with your heart and your soul. And it's just sort of this reminder that Jupiter is pointing you back towards the things that really matter. Something to reflect on. I know that it's been a little bit of a hard time for Aquarius, especially with Saturn square Uranus and the eclipses of April, November, the eclipses of April and May of last year as well. So this is a good recalibration point for you, Aquarius, especially as Saturn, starts to come to the end of Aquarius. It's going to go into Pisces on March 7th. Sagittarius season for you is a time when you are thinking ahead. You're starting to come to the end of your personal zodiac calendar, and it's about looking ahead to the coming year, or even, to the time beyond that. And what is your vision? And so this is a time where your vision then needs to be supported by, again, these deeper spiritual themes and deeper values. Pisces. So here, you've been like the star of the show without even realizing it. So one of the things I've been talking about for the other 12 signs, or other 11 signs, is that Jupiter is at the very end of Pisces. So you are a Pisces. So Jupiter is at the very end of your sign. So you exist as, how do I put this? Your sign is in the place of Aries. I don't know if that makes sense. So you are a Pisces, or your Pisces rising. So you lead, take action, start new things from Pisces, which is a sign that's about endings. See where I'm going with this? So it sort of is this sign that really has one foot in another world, and it does take action, it does lead, it does move forward from a place that really does understand hopefully the larger picture. So this is a time where Jupiter, as your ruling planet, as sort of the big hand on your personal clock, has been leading you on a new voyage. And so you started something new back in 2021. I believe it was May of 2021 when Jupiter first went into Pisces before dipping back out. And that was the start of a 12-year voyage for you. And yes, Jupiter went into Aries just this past May, but it really sort of said that you had to go back and reflect on something, or look at, start something over, or sort of begin again in a new way. This is all in advance of Jupiter changing signs next week on December 20th. So that's a big change in your personal zodiac calendar. Sagittarius season for you really points you out towards the world, and it talks about your professional goals and aims and ambitions and the role that you want to play in the world. And Jupiter is a career planet for you, and so maybe this is a week where you're really reflecting not only on yourself, your life, but sort of these bigger directions and these bigger ambitions that you want to head towards. So yeah, it's a big time, Pisces. So that is your look at the astrology. Let's think about it for a second. The astrology of December 12th through 18th, 2022. Again, we're in that really sort of liminal space between the end of one part of the zodiac and sort of getting ready for the beginning of another side of the zodiac once Jupiter changes signs next week. So use this time wisely, reflect, search, look for answers not just outside of you, but also the answers within. 29 Pisces is where we really truly release our, I'm going to say negative, but let's say less helpful attachments to the physical plane, so that we can sort of release it and start over when Jupiter goes into Aries. That said, just a quick reminder, I'm doing a webinar on the astrology of 2023 this Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. If you cannot join live, you can, of course, get the replay. You can still register. I do this every year. I do my big review of the coming astrological year, and we've got a couple of big things happening. Saturn goes into Pisces, and Pluto goes into Aquarius in March. We've got the eclipses changing signs. And so we got lots to cover. Friendly reminder, because it's that time of year, I do gift certificates. You can get gift certificates on my website, also in the show notes. And I mentioned I'm doing an interview it's going live on Friday the 16th. It's an interview on the astrology of New Year's Eve with Spirit and Spark. We're having a little chat, so that link is also in the show notes. But we will talk next week. Be well, be safe, and until the next time, take care.